Good evening and welcome to Undaunted, bringing into the news untold stories. I'm Star Smart. Let's begin. While we call the president's speech of last week a balanced diet, we'd summarized last week for Ambazonia to be a week of unyielding resolve and resilience, as it was indeed in one of its highest momentum. Good day, Ambazonia. This past week has been nothing short of monumental in Ambazonia's quest for freedom, a week that saw the spirit of Ambazonia surge to unprecedented heights as we commemorated the October 1st Ambazonia's rightful Independence Day celebrations. A series of powerful events highlighted the resilience, unity, and unwavering determination of the Amazonian people, reminding us all that the fight of Ambazonia for justice and sovereignty is far from over. On September 30th, we gathered for the president the pre-Independence Day show, a stirring occasion that set the tone for the Independence Day celebrations, where President Samuel Sako addressed the nation with a powerful speech that reverberated across the globe. His words were a rallying cry, reminding us of the sacrifices made throughout the struggle for liberation and reinforcing the legitimacy of Ambazonia's cause. He emphasized that the identity of Ambazonia and right to self-determination is not negotiable, inspiring Ambazonians everywhere to unite in the face of ongoing oppression. As we approach the Independence Day just after the presidential address, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation, despite the heavy-handed tactics employed by the colonial authorities, particularly Mesem Colonial SDO Simon Emil Mo, who attempted to suppress celebrations with bans and gatherings. The Amazonian spirit could not be extinguished. Communities across the homeland sprang into action, organizing public demonstrations and rehearsing march passes, each event a bold declaration of the Ambazonian resolve to celebrate her identity and assert her rights. The defiance exhibited by the peoples of Ambazonia in the face of intimidation showcased a steadfast determination that could not be silenced. On October 1st, Ambazonia's Independence Day, we, like others around the globe, celebrated with fervor, demonstrating the Ambazonian spirit, which remains unbroken. Despite attempts to quash the celebrations, Ambazonian communities thrived, marking the day with pride and resilience, refusing annihilation by the colonial La République du Cameroon. The images of jubilant gatherings, spirited march passes, and heartfelt speeches were testaments to unity and collective strength. Following these momentous celebrations, President Sako held a pivotal press conference just on Friday, October 4th, further energizing the Amazonian movement. The press conference saw the president talking with journalists all across the world about the Amazonian struggle for liberation and receiving questions from journalists from the Cameroons, neighboring Nigeria, Brazil, North America, and across the world, which the president gave remarkable answers to, expanding the Amazonian side of the story that is hardly heard from by the world from Ambazonia themselves. Engaging with journalists, President Sako articulated the struggles and injustices faced by Ambazonia, calling for international support and recognition of her plight. His emphasis on the necessity of strategic diplomacy illustrated his commitment to building a future rooted in justice and freedom. This press conference was not just an opportunity to share the Amazonian story, it was a clarion call for solidarity and action on the global stage. Well, as we reflect on these significant events, the pre-Independence Day show, the vibrant Independence Day celebrations, and the insightful press conference, we see a narrative of resistance, resilience, unity, and hope. The legacy of October 1st, 1961, when the sovereignty of Ambazonia was unjustly denied, fuels the Ambazonian resolve to continue its fight. The determination exhibited by Ambazonians during this charged week stands as a testament to their collective will to overcome oppression and reclaim the rightful place as a sovereign nation. This past week was a defining moment in the quest for freedom, illustrating the indomitable spirit of the Amazonian people. Well, as we move forward from the Independence Day celebrations and the charged week of last week, honoring the sacrifices of those who came before this generation and reaffirming the commitment to a free and independent Ambazonia. The world is watching and together stand resolute, declaring with conviction that Ambazonia indeed shall be free once again. Well, with that, we'll get into the details of this week. What has happened in Ambazonia so far, away from the celebrations and the charged atmosphere, the momentum from last week. We'll get to see that in the prime headlines coming up right now.
Stand with Ambazonia. Empower ABC Amba TV. We are calling on Ambazonians around the world to unite and uplift ABC Amba TV, Ambazonian Broadcasting Corporation. In this critical time of war, ensuring the station's survival is more important than ever. But what does ABC Amba TV truly represent for Ambazonia?
At the heart of Ambazonia's war of independence, ABC Amba TV stands as a beacon. Years of recolonization, annexation, and French Cameroon's oppressive occupation of the southern Cameroon's Ambazonia have led to our exclusion. Our identity was hidden, our history distorted, our sovereignty denied.
Queen of England is aware that the British Southern Cameroons were never a colony under France.
Since its inception in 2018, ABC Amba TV has been our lifeline.
Months of diplomacy have failed to resolve the crisis as fear grows over an imminent Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Our work in the dark is our chance to tell our stories to the world, to give voice to the voiceless, and broadcast the truth of our struggle.
We are serious about executing this revolution.
It has become a vital arm of our government in wartime, making diplomacy achievable and showcasing our untold stories.
ABC Amba, you guys know how important ABC is for this, our quest for international recognition.
Your donations can make a world of difference. Every bit of support helps keep our stories alive, our presence known, and our fight in the global conversation.
The moment they notice that we are no longer on air, they think that, oh, maybe La Republic has succeeded. This is about Ambazonia. One thing we must always remember.
Where would we be without ABC Amba TV? Let's ensure we never have to find out.
A revolution is a temporary state of insanity to bring about sanity.
Mobilize, donate, stand with Ambazonia, donate to ABC Amba TV.
Together, let's write the next chapter of our history.
It is better to light the candle than to curse the dark.
Support ABC Amba TV campaign. Ambazonia Independence, voice for the voiceless. Mobilize for change.
Oh, well, these are the prime headlines for Undaunted tonight. After more than 60 years with La République du Cameroun, Ambazonians are still to understand what good roads networks really are. It is a nightmare going to Achatugi due to bad roads. With the rise in insecurity yet again in Bamenda amidst the war, gunmen kill one and kidnap that person's friend in targeted attack. Mamfe appeals to La République for hospital rehabilitation amidst ongoing struggle for dignity. the same hospital that was burned by the colonial forces 2 years ago. The so-called major national dialogue still a failure after 4 years. The national monologue celebrates the 4th-year anniversary with the growing violence in Ambazonia. Massive protests erupt in Ghana against illegal mining. That is news from across Africa, and the news across the globe has Harris's border visit and economy speech capture attention as warning signs emerge for the campaign. With that, we head on to the prime news and then the full report. Well, the Amazonian conflict has been ongoing for years, with reports of human rights abuses, violence, and displacement. In a recent effort to raise global awareness, President Sako of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia recently held a press conference attended by journalists from around the world, including Brazil, North America, Nigeria, neighboring Nigeria, and the Cameroons. In this press conference held in Washington, D.C. on October 4, 2024, Dr. Sako stressed the importance of true representation in resolving the armed conflict. He believes that Cameroon's parliament does not genuinely represent Southern Cameroons and therefore cannot decide on solutions. Instead, Dr. Sako suggested that only those actively resisting in the struggle have the right to decide on solutions. This would exclude civil society organizations and self-identified Anglophones, quote, who are not actively involved in the resistance. During the conference, President Sako also emphasized the importance of dialogue over continued violence, highlighting the value of Ambazonian lives. He also addressed questions regarding Choi Aba's arrest and dispelled fears by citing the global recognition of Ambazonian leaders like Dr. Mungwa and Pastor Commando, and lecturers of Ambazonian descent teaching in various universities worldwide, demonstrating the intellectual capacity and resilience of the Ambazonian diaspora. Well, the war in Ambazonia stems from the nation's complex history, including its annexation by Cameroon in 1961, despite being a UN-recognized trust territory with its own distinct cultural and linguistic identity. Today, the situation remains dire, with thousands killed, displaced, or detained. Key issues in the Amazonian conflict that was discussed in the press conference includes the human rights abuses, the reports of killings, tortures, arbitrary arrests, massacres, to better put, displacement, hundreds of thousands forced to flee their homes, lack of international recognition, with Ambazonia's sovereignty not recognized by the United Nations or the international community. We also saw the cultural erasure, efforts to assimilate the Amazonian culture and language into Cameroon's Francophone-dominated society. Now, the press conference marked an important step in shedding light on the crisis and rallying international support for a peaceful resolution. As President Sako emphasized the fight for Amazonian freedom, which is a universal concern, requiring collective actions and solidarity. To conclude this presidential press conference of Friday, would say it was indeed successful and it was amazing. Before we head on into the happenings on the home front, we're still in the spore of the events over the weekend from last week until Friday. We have with us in the studios Barrister Mbeseha. Good evening, Barrister Mbeseha.
Good evening to you all. I'm happy to see you once more after the celebrations.
Well, indeed, the celebrations were amazing. It was global. People on the home front celebrated, people everywhere celebrated. And I mean, Amazonians are still yet to get out of the excitement of the celebrations of 1st October, even the Ambazonian Independence Eve presidential address and all the events that happened over last week. You particularly, what was 1st October celebrations like for you?
Well, I took part in everything. But I want to marry the two, so my comments might have some meaning. See, we're dealing with the week events, starting with the celebrations on Tuesday, ending with the press conference on Friday. So we have to bring these two issues together. And then you have talked of a complicated history of a people. You can add that to show where we came from and where we ended up in the course of at the end of the week. We all know the history of Ambazonia, British Southern Cameroon, is a complex history, but put in a nutshell, a history of people betrayed by the international community, a history of a people with the right to self-determination, handed over to a criminal, a big python, trying to swallow a small porcupine. But luckily, the porcupine has thorns, the python cannot swallow it. And so that is the historical background. And we remember what Paul Biya said. We tried to assimilate them in the past 50 years, 60. We've not succeeded. So by that, he sounded a warning to go back to the drawing board. And so now comes the week, celebration, press conference. I would describe the whole week as a week of resolve and a week of clarity. Just those two phrases, resolve and clarity. Resolve is shown by the way we celebrated this day. A resolve to tell the world that these are not people that you would quickly subdue. A resolve to tell Yaoundé that no matter the bully, no matter how many people die, you can only kill some. You cannot kill everybody. And so the Ambazonians who have survived up to this point are resolved to get what is theirs. That's the essence of the celebration. We celebrated ourselves. We ate and drank. We danced. We felt tired. But the message was for ourselves, but essentially sent to the Republic. They were resolved to get what we want to get. And by extension to the world, the international community, that gave us up in this unworthy agreement. And so that is the result showed by the celebrations. Then came the press conference, which I say a press conference of clarity. We don't have a lot of time, but the press conference clarified so many things that have been going on, that everybody in Cameroon, that is people in Cameroon, everybody in the world, everybody in the United Nations should understand what the whole matter is about. The president, for example, said that we had restored the institutions that were in 1961 by asking the question, where is the government? That resolution 1608 asked to go and sit and negotiate with the government of the Cameroon. Where's the government today? They had attempted to kill it, but it's revived. It has been revived. And therefore, he was telling the world and Yaoundé that the issue at stake that has led to this war, which is ongoing, is not about language. It's not a language problem. It's not an Anglophone problem. It's not a labor problem. It's not a thing of teachers looking for better pay or lawyers looking for better conditions of work. It is an institutional issue whose institutions were restored by setting up a government in exile that represents those institutions. And so the institutional issues should be resolved. Then he addressed something which is important. In Cameroon, there has been this sing-song of all Anglophone conference to discuss what they want. It is ongoing. And he said, this government is not going to mortgage this struggle to volunteers, activists, and whoever to do it. Bishops and priests, they are welcome. But they should constitute themselves into civil society groups. And if they have an opinion to give, they should provide that opinion to the leading government. Because he says, you can go and hold 1,001 conferences. If you are not addressing the people who are carrying the arms, you will not end the war. If the goal is to negotiate and end the war, you have to talk to the people who matter. Who are these people who matter? They are the people who are carrying the guns. But you're not going to meet each person carrying the gun in the bush. You're going to meet those who are, for whom they are fighting. There's this thing they call the government. There's no missing words there. And so that would take me to address something that has been ongoing ever since, which I probably would not have loved to talk about. But let me talk about it here to illustrate. But I know people are following it. We cannot pretend that we don't know what is going on around us. There's something going on, propped up by a certain Capo Daniel, which he calls the PRAC, which some Anglophones, some Ambazonians have bought into it. They have been trying to hold a conference in Canada. Again, that's Canada 4. And what is this thing that PRAC says? He calls it a group of activists, volunteer activists. Capo Daniel is mentioned himself an activist. And the rest will know. They have gone together and they want to find solutions, which is a total violation of what President Sako said. We're not going to mortgage this struggle into the hands of activists and volunteers. They have co-opted bishops and pastors. We're not going to volunteer these things into them. If those bishops and pastors are interested in this problem, if they are Cameroonians, let them constitute themselves into civil society, give their opinion to people who are fighting the war, and then we'll see how we can move on. Again, because what Capo Daniel is selling as Canada 4 is only another Anglophone conference turned into a different word. Because what this is inviting people to come to Canada, brainstorm on what the Anglophones according to him want. These are all proposals by Anglophones as well. They are talking to themselves. And then, of course, carry these proposals to the Vatican. They have the Vatican tell Paul Biya or whoever is sitting here only, this is what the Anglophones want. It's still a proposal. That idea summarily was dismissed by the president in the press conference. We are going to sit on the conference table face to face as two parties with equal status, he said. So calling a Canada 4 in any name other than Anglophone conference spells down to something. What is the difference between what Capo Daniel is trying to do with what he did with the others in Canada 3, what they call the pre-talks? They were ambassadors talking to themselves, preparing themselves to go and talk to Paul Biya. They were all Ambazonians. There were a few observers there, sent by Yaoundé to see what they were talking about. And once Yaoundé realized that they had gone out of the topic that they proposed, they closed it and said no more. What's the difference between what they were doing and what had happened in Canada 2? The CDN, that had summoned Anglophones in general, call them like that, to talk among themselves, choose a leader, a leading organization they call the CDN, to go and negotiate for them. Just no difference. So changing appellations is not going to be of any use to anybody. And I'm sure the president made this clear in his press conference, which is, I call it, the press conference of clarity. It was clear what they had not known, or that they had pretended not to know, was adequately clarified in that press conference. And so we have come to this week, the week has ended, with all these landmark scores. We have scored a lot in terms of resolve. Yaoundé now knows, because Yaoundé was also celebrating 4 years of the Grand National Dialogue. They were celebrating it from the civil cabinet of the presidency. They issued a circular out there. They have their own thing. Okay.
Yes, speaking of this, celebrating did you say 2 years of the Grand National Dialogue?
I said 4 years or more.
Yes, actually, because it's 4 years. It's 4 years
It's actually,
today, actually.
according to them,
It's
they say
making its
5 years because
fourth
it
year.
was 2019. Yes.
So, yeah, on Friday, actually, when the president was
Yeah.
having his press conference, that was when he actually marked 4 years since the purported dialogue, which we all know was a monologue that was organized by the La République du Cameroon colonial regime, purportedly aimed at finding solutions to the conflict in the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. And 4 years later, analysts agree that these talks have failed to yield any result. The Grand National Monologue was held in Yaoundé, the colonial capital of La République, from September 30th to October 4th in 2019, just like you said, Barrister Mbeseha. Despite the stated goals of the 2019 monologue, the security situation in Ambazonia remains just as critical and in urgent need of intervention. Armed conflicts persist, with casualties occurring daily. The civilian population continues to be caught in the crossfire, suffering from targeted killings and injuries due to stray bullets. Colonial administrators, in a concerted effort to promote propaganda, have claimed time and time again that normalcy has returned to various hostile zones in Ambazonia amidst the war, a narrative increasingly contradicted by the daily realities on ground. These administrators travel in armored vehicles, saying that normalcy have returned, while local councils operate from heavily militarized city centers, abandoning their municipalities. The lack of genuine action to address security concerns underscores the bad faith of the colonial leadership, including the colonial president Paul Biya, the president of La République, and his collaborators. The major national monologue of 2019, which we would say wasted taxpayers' monies to host allies of the colonial regime, was a strategy for Paul Biya to reward his supporters through institutions established as a result of that event, is what a lot of Amazonians have finally concluded that to be. It is imperative for La République colonial government to not only reflect on the past 4 years since their so-called major national dialogue and recognize the necessity for a genuine and inclusive dialogue to address the ongoing war and its devastating effects on the economic, social, and political life of Ambazonia, but also to change its stance on letting Ambazonia go, seeing the truth in Ambazonia's historicity and the illegality of this ongoing annexation, and more importantly, the right of Ambazonia to self-determination. I think it is enough reason for the colonial regime to see a better resolution to the ongoing war. Now, what would your take be looking at the 4-year anniversary of this purported dialogue that has yielded no fruit, Barrister Mbeseha? I would like to get your take. This is something we'd like to ask you, Barrister Mbeseha, to share your thoughts on.
Yeah, I agree with my thoughts, but I think my thoughts are important, but there are many other thoughts that are more important than mine. You see, this is what happened. I'm making a mistake. The presidency issued a circular talking about the 5th year of the Ghana National Dialogue. Why? Because it ended on the 4th of October 2019 to 2024, which is exactly 5 years. And they were about to celebrate that. They instructed, they have their own TV at the presidency, they instructed CRTV to have debates on that, to celebrate the achievements. But beyond the presidential television station and CRTV, which is the voice of the government, I follow a lot of other private networks in La République du Cameroon, Equinox, Canal, and so on and so forth. Most of them organize debates on the Grand National Dialogue. And the consensus by the majority of the discussions there was that, or is that, the Grand National Dialogue failed. It failed. Just for the simple reason that you have put there in your monologue. It failed because as we speak today, as we spoke on that Friday, where they were debating over the weekend, the personal representative of Paul Biya, in the name of the prefect, the governors, and so on and so forth, cannot move out of their offices without being carried in tankers. They cannot go there. They cannot move out of the street. And so there's a consensus agreement that the Grand National Dialogue, whatever thing they propose from there, has failed to end the crisis. It has been a failure. They agree with that. It's not even me. By a large majority of their own analysts, it has failed. And so if I say it has failed, they will say it is me saying no. They all agree by a large majority that the Grand National Dialogue failed. And so the issue now is, if it failed, their debate did not offer solutions, but most of them said, look, let them go back to square one and start. But it failed because of what you and me see, or what everybody is living like there. Again, before we went off to that, before we even started the celebrations, marking all this, there was this lockdown, which was the symptom of what was coming on 1st October celebration. The lockdown sent chilling remarks to the international community, the Vatican, the US government, and whoever is found in Yaoundé, to remind them that, look, this thing is different from what you think. If people can obey the lockdown order, which is purely civil disobedience, from the city to the village, then somebody must be giving these instructions. Something is wrong that you are not seeing it, Mr. Ambassadors. Something is wrong that you are refusing to see. Something is wrong that even our own brothers and sisters who are hanging to the upper springs of Yaoundé are not seeing. And so the message was large and clear. It is still like that. It was crowned, I said, at the end of the week, by the clarity that the president gave in his press conference. It was the international press conference. He addressing the world. He clarified why it has failed. He clarified what should be done next. And so, by and large, that is what it is. For me, I can dance jumping up with my heart up and dancing and drinking. That we succeeded. By more than what I thought. I personally did not expect the lockdown to be that wonderfully successful. I did not. So it went beyond expectation, even for people who are so devoted. I did not expect the president to be able to give that clarity of what this struggle is about. In summary, he said, and it is to be repeated, we shall not mortgage this struggle to volunteers and people who think that they're interested, including the so-called activist groups, including our own brothers and sisters who have become missionaries, who have become bishops, who have become pastors. But you're not kept out of the loop, he said. Constitute yourself into your civil society. If you have proposals to give it to the people who are acting, and they will move on. I think that's my take. I've just repeated myself, and I think that's the take of most Ambazonians. Over to you.
Right, thank you, Barrister Mbeseha. Now we'll move away from all of this diplomatic side of the story to the reality on ground, which is talking about the daily terrible experience Ambazonians have to face, moving from things as common as good road networks, which becomes something that they have almost never seen. And this is after more than 60 years with La Republique. Amazonians are still yet to understand what good road network really means. It is a nightmare going to Achatugi due to bad roads. I mean, why are we saying Achatugi when it's almost every corner of Ambazonia? Infrastructure has been on the drain in Ambazonia since the unholy union with Ambazonia, with La Republique in 1961. The road in Ambazonia are nothing to be desired, despite the fact the La Republique du Cameroon keeps exploiting the peoples of Ambazonia financially and in all aspects. As contrary to what obtained before, a cross-section of colonial military in Ambazonia now have private cars. The money used in the purchase of these cars, where do you think it's gotten from? It's either through ransom or illegal extortion points planted all across Ambazonia yet. Not a single good road in sight. The La Republique du Cameroon colonial government has the obligation to develop Ambazonia in all spheres, given that since the union of 1960-1961 monopolized powers, instead of developing Ambazonia, La Republique is rather impoverishing Ambazonia. A video has surfaced, which you can see, with people going through hell yet again, but this time in another access road through Achatugi. Access mod, because there is no road there. The Achatugi road was a very important road when it comes to the economy of Ambazonia. But Achatugi, which hosted one of the finest eye hospital in the Cameroons run by the Presbyterian Church, now this is what it is, more or less a forbidden kingdom, thanks to La Republique's refusal to rehabilitate the roads in Ambazonia. And while Ambazonians are going through this heartache of the terrible, dilapidated state of road and basically having no infrastructure, we're seeing yet another case of insecurity rising due to the war, in a devastating incident that has shaken the heart of Bamenda particularly, and of course Ambazonia generally. A known gunman ruthlessly claimed the life of Valerie Ngucho and abducted his friend in a calculated attack. This tragic event unfolded in the Ntamulang neighborhood of Bamenda local government area on Saturday, October 5th, 2024, around 8:30 p.m., deepening the pall of fear that hangs over the community. Eyewitnesses recounted a harrowing scene. Ngucho and his friend had just departed a popular drinking spot heading towards the Ntambe Sea Quarter when they were ambushed by armed assailants. The sudden violence shattered the night, leaving one of them dead and the other taken to an unknown fate. The attackers didn't stop at the murder. They set Ngucho's motorcycle ablaze, symbolizing their merciless intent. Despite being rushed to a nearby health facility, Ngucho's injuries proved too severe. He was later transferred to a larger hospital where he was pronounced dead, and his lifeless body now rests in the morgue at Bamenda Regional Hospital, which is a grim reminder of the violence that has become all too common in the southern Cameroons. This incident is part of a disturbing pattern, with the nexus between local bars and violent crimes becoming increasingly evident. Community members are left to ponder the sinister connections that may be fueling these targeted killings, as those exploiting the chaos of the ongoing conflict in southern Cameroon's Ambazonia continue to strike fear into the hearts of the innocent civilian population. As Bamenda grapples with this tragedy, we are committed to finding out further and bringing updates to Ambazonia, what really is going on with the bars and these targeted killings. The sorrow enveloping Bamenda is palpable as it mourns yet again, caught in the grip of a relentless war that continues to devastate lives and families. It is rather all too sad. Barrister Mbeseha, we're seeing different aspects of sufferings that Ambazonia have to go through, which is why the Ambazonia continues to push for its liberation, so it will have a more stabilized nation, a nation that is governed and cared for by the genuine government of southern Cameroon. This is why Ambazonia continues to fight, but right now they're still facing these perils on the home front, different angles to suffering, cases of insecurity and murder, and cases of neglect, where there are no good roads, infrastructure, there's just nothing to boast about in the southern Cameroons right now.
Yes, we've addressed this issue of bad roads before, but I'll come to bad roads. Let me deal with the death of that bag rider. We've had the opportunity before to say that on the ground, be it in Bamenda, Mamfe, or anywhere else in Ambazonia, there's generalized insecurity. Why this generalized insecurity? Who is supposed to bring security to the citizens of Bamenda, of Mamfe, of Boya, any place else in the country? There's something they call a government there. It is the government that owns the courts. It is the government that owns the multiple of security people, call them gendarmes, police, BO, whatever you call it. Why are they not securing their own citizens? It is the total absence of government. We've had the time to debate here. In that very Bamenda, the mayor and the rest will struggle to lock up your store for not opening after you pay your patent. In other words, you pay your taxes. Where is the return for the taxes the people in Bamenda pay if the government cannot give them security? The excuse that Amber boys are fighting us is no excuse. Amber boys, or whatever name we give them, don't have any obligation to provide security for the citizens. It is the government. If it is a colonial government, it is a responsibility. Now, having done it, everything that happens, they have to bear responsibility for that. But before they bear responsibility, we have tried to say, let every Ambazonian, wherever you find yourself, try to make yourself safe. Because after killing that guy, it's not that they killed him, yes. You don't even find any effort by the government, in other words, the police, the gendarmes, the procureur, and so on and so forth, trying to bring the criminals to book. They've abandoned that responsibility. Nobody is punishing the criminals. Nobody is punishing anybody for doing anything wrong. Because, to me, I would think that most of those things are done with the tacit approval of the government. Because they know, sometimes they know the people, they don't want to act against them. And so that's the point of security. And then we'll turn over to Achatubi. You should dare the road to Achatubi. Achatubi is just symbolic. But Achatubi is important, I should put it there. Achatubi has been home to one of the best hospitals in that place, in that region. Achatubi is found in Boyo. That hospital was opened in the 60s. That's been there forever by missionaries to help the people. They have even grown to a point that they've exported their services sometimes to Douala, to Mutengene. They have a large extension of their unit in Mutengene, and I hear they have it in Douala. But what is a hospital worth if people cannot reach there? If they are sick, it's worth nothing because the hospital is meant to cure you. In addition to Achatubi, for example, we have another hospital of a rare species in Bamsa that is run by the Kali Mission, the Heart Center, cardiology, which is so important. It is one of the best in the country. But there's absolutely no road there to get there. Heart patients who are attacked somewhere who want to reach Bamsa for treatment, they don't even get there, they die. And I'm saying this as a clear example. I had an uncle of mine who had a heart problem. He had been there before. He got back home. He wanted to go back to Bamsa to follow up. There was no road. He took a motorcycle. You imagine a heart patient, a cardiac problem, riding a motorcycle. He didn't even go 10 yards. He died. And so, if you permit me, I would like to marry that issue of roads in Achatubi and the roads in general to what you raised, which I think you're coming back to it, the so-called the rehabilitation of the Mamfe hospital.
Right, let's get into that because Barrister Mbeseha, when we talk about this Mamfe hospital, let's know that this Mamfe hospital is still the same one that, according to reports, was actually burnt by the colonial forces 2 years ago this year. Now, the report sheds light on the profound suffering endured by the peoples of Ambazonia at the hands of the colonial La Republique regime, which has forced the colonial mayor of Mamfe to urgently appeal for assistance in addressing the devastation wrought upon the community. The colonial mayor, Robert C. Tabechong Ashu, desperate plea highlights the dire circumstances that have claimed countless lives in Mamfe, and sadly, history suggests that such appeals fall on deaf ears. Asking the colonial regime to come rehabilitate a hospital is something we've seen one too many times ignored by the colonial regime. In Manu County, part of the Midland Zone of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia, the healthcare situation remains critical, deteriorated for over 2 years. Efforts to establish a standard medical facility have stagnated, particularly following the destruction of the Mamfe District Hospital by the colonial forces in 2022. This act of violence has left the community without essential medical services, exacerbating an already precarious situation. Mayor Tabechong has openly lamented the tragic consequences of this healthcare crisis, stating that many individuals have succumbed to treatable conditions due to inadequate medical care. People are suffering and dying because they don't have a medical facility in Manu. He said this: the lack of immediate care often forced patients to be referred to distant locations, such as Kumba, where they may face further delays. Tragically, there have been instances where patients have lost their lives en route to receiving help. We just talked about the bad roads. What roads do they drive to these hospitals that they refer to in different counties? They may also voice concerns over the deteriorating state of local roads, which have been neglected by the colonial regime. Poor infrastructure, compounded by ongoing security threats, has made accessing medical care increasingly difficult. The current security concerns make movement for medical attention tedious, he noted, pointing to a bleak picture of the challenges faced by residents. In light of these harrowing circumstances, it is evident that the suffering inflicted by La Republique, the colonial regime, has left communities like the Mamfe County in a state of desperation. Mamfe community in a state of desperation. The urgent need for systemic change and accountability is clear. Yet the response from the colonial authorities remain uncertain. As the people of Ambazonia continue to bear the burden of neglect and violence, their pleas for assistance resonate amidst a backdrop of suffering and loss, which is one of the main reasons the peoples of Ambazonia continue their relentless fight for freedom, which lies in their unwavering commitment to self-determination and justice, as evidenced by these recent celebrations of the Independence Day on October 1st, which is a powerful testament of their refusal to be shackled by the colonial narrative and the colonial regime that doesn't really care about the Southern Cameroons. An act of defiance celebrating their true Independence Day on October 1st to reinforce the resolve to resist this oppression that has long defined Ambazonia's existence. Well, Barrister Mbeseha, over to you now. You were talking more about whether the colonial regime says there are some amber boys, as they would put it. It is up to them. Since they continue to take Ambazonia taxpayers' monies, they continue to take it. It is up to them to provide these basic essential needs for Ambazonians. Yet people are dying because they cannot access hospital either due to bad roads or the one that was available in Mamfe, for instance. In Mamfe was destroyed by the colonial La Republique regime, and they are yet to do anything about it, which has forced the mayor to now even come out and ask the colonial regime to do something about the hospital. You were saying something about it. We'll give you the floor now to finish what you were saying.
I was trying to go around and come back to that. And this is where I was trying to hit to. You see, remember our last segment, we talked about the Grand National Dialogue, which ended on the 4th of October 2019. At the end of that dialogue, one of the resolutions and one of the activities of government was to set up something they call a reconstruction of the Northwest and Southwest, the NOZO, as they call it. Reconstructing them, according to them, reconstructing what the war has destroyed. They are said to have pumped billions of francs CFA into that project. Nobody doubts in any form or shape that what happened to the Bamenda Mamfe Hospital was a result of the war. It was burned down by the military. They may refuse it. Call even amber or even thieves. The burning down was a result of the crisis of the war ongoing in Ambazonia and in Mamfe in particular. And so they have been priding themselves of succeeding, which has told you that they debated the outcome of the Grand National Dialogue and agreed that was all a failure. If they could not reconstruct Mamfe Hospital, call it rehabilitate as they call it, because that hospital was very, very important. It served the colonial administrators. Besides that, it is also in Mbeseha, where the largest military camp is found. It saved them. If, after gathering so much money, according to them, to reconstruct the NOZO, they are unable to think about the Mamfe Hospital, which they burned down more than 2-3 years ago. Where is their reconstruction effort? Where is the so-called money they gathered from the so-called Grand National Dialogue? If they would not reconstruct my village or a private school in the bush, they may think that you can forget about that. But there's no way you forget about a big hospital standing in the middle of town, which was burned down in the middle of the war, and everybody is seeing it. It is not just on the road. It is on the way to on the highway linking Cameroon to Nigeria. When you drive to the to Nigeria on that Nigerian highway, you pass on that place. And so where is it? So where is the reconstruction effort that they claim that was the outcome of the 2019 Grand National Dialogue? And by extension, I was trying to add, we have never had any roads there, be it in Achatugui. Achatugui, you saw even some four-wheel drive trying to drive there before they could not drive. We don't even have a track in my own place. Absolutely nothing. We have a mission hospital, which is very good, but we can't things on the head. And so, again, this is Achatugui, not far away from Bamenda in Boyo. 6 months, 8 months ago, we saw the ambassador of France come to Bamenda and promised to give so much money for the development of the Northwest. That was in the dry season. Where's the money they gave? Where's the money they gave? And then Achatugui, which is just next door, cannot have even a road graded. He came to Bamenda in the context of the war and the context of implementing the decisions of the Grand National Dialogue. If Achatugui, that the mayor's child, his wife, the governor's own son or wife, if they fall sick, they will go there. If they cannot get that road, where are the promises made by France? Because the French ambassador was speaking for France. Where are they? Where is the money they gave? They promised the mayor of Bamenda billions in reconstruction. And here we are in October, people cannot pass. Here we are in October, the mayor of Mamfe, who has been winning medals for being the best mayor. You are crying out there, who is the government you are calling on to come and help? The government in Mamfe, Mr. Mayor, the government that represents Paul Biya in Mamfe is the prefect. We don't want to see you on radio talking. Go talk to him. It's a chef d'etat. So your own frustration, you come there talking about they should come reconstruct the hospital. Why didn't you go and talk to the mayor? The mayor is not alone. Yeah, why don't you talk to the prefect? That's not all. The highest commander of the military in Mamfe, who takes direct orders from the presidency, is in Mbeseha. They have an engineering corps at the military. Why have they not come and reconstructed that place? They have been doing reconstruction somewhere else in the Cameroon. What would they not do in Mamfe? Simplest answer, because it is an Anglophone area. They have no reason to do it. The rather lady perish, and shamelessly, Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, you carry some CPD and place on you. Yeah, they're begging for an impossibility. Where's your own share of the of the reconstruction money? If anything came to Mamfe, at the very least, they should have started to build the Mamfe hospital. Nothing came. Nothing came. Why are you talking to us? Why are we seeing you talking here? Why don't you want to talk to Chief Tabe Tando, who is number 2 in the Senate? Why don't you go and talk to the other guy? I think it's one of you there who is the Vice Assistant Secretary General in the presidency. They occupied all these places. Call themselves Anglophones, 1. Call themselves Manu people, 2. And then you don't even have a hospital there that they destroyed. Where were they when they destroyed that hospital? As we speak today, 3 years after, have they held anybody accountable for that destruction? Zero accountability. They didn't even attempt, I'm not sure they attempted even to investigate. They have not investigated anything. Nobody has been held accountable. Therefore, by implication, government is responsible. Over to you.
Thank you, Barrister Mbeseha. That was very well explained and well detailed. Well, that will be all for the national reports, but I believe you still have a thing or two to say before we let you go. Coming from the celebrations and down to the reports of tonight, you have something else to say with regards to this before we let you go, Barrister Mbeseha, in few words.
Well, the only I can say is a week after all these things, in fact, let me call it 2 weeks, starting from the lockdown to the Friday press conference. All indications are there that we are on the right track. A right track is not a track. We call it a track. It's not a tar road. It's not a paved road where you drive without having nails. You're on a track. We know what a track is in the village. Our mothers and parents go to the farm. They go there even without chanshu. They hit their toes on stones. but it doesn't prevent them. They still go to the farm, plant the vegetable that you and me eat to survive. They still go to the farm, harvest cocoyams and anything that you can eat. The road is rough, but they go there and come back. So our journey has been rough, but it is worth doing it. We must do it because, in summary, there's light at the end of the tunnel. We see some bright lights shining there, but you should not excuse yourself. You should not be the one to die before you see the light. You should not be a quitter before you see the final light. So these are all encouraging signs. Learn from what you did not know. Be encouraged to do what you're already doing if you are doing the right thing. And again, to our brothers and sisters, Amazonians in particular, don't be fooled anymore of something called Canada 4. Anything called Ambazonians to come together and decide what they want. They go and give the proposal to Yaoundé. We know what we want. Let Yaoundé, under Biya, or anybody sitting in it today, come to the conference table. There are only two parties to a conflict. Only two in this case. If you like a federation like Cabo Daniel likes, like Munzu likes, fine. Do some people for one Cameroon. You fall in that camp there. How you do your one Cameroon, where you call them regions or whatever thing you call it, autonomous councils, that's your problem. Those who want us to go out of it, there are only two places. You're either for the one Cameroon, or you're for separation, your own independence. And so, our brothers and sisters, stop fooling others. Stop fooling yourselves. Again, Mr. Mayor, this is a good example. Stop deceiving yourself. Somebody is here only looking for you. The people in Dian, we discussed it last week. Stop deceiving yourself. I heard that the mayor and the duo of Idabato disappeared. I think they've given up. Nobody's even investigating to find out where they went to. They went to Nigeria. They kidnapped. According to them, these are people who could go to Nigeria and catch Sako and bring him back. Let them go to Nigeria, use the same system, and look for their duo, if they're worth anything. And so we're resolved. There's light at the end of the tunnel. I encourage everybody to be resilient, contribute the widow's mite you have, but be encouraged that you are not left behind. Over to you.
I'm indeed glad that I asked you to speak one more time before you left, because this very last words of yours have quite an impact. Like, I know you're a learned barrister. I didn't know you were also a philosopher. I think one thing that every Ambazonian should take home amongst the bunch of things you've said that are so important is the fact that you said we are on the right track. Doesn't mean it's a tarred road. Barrister Mbeseha, I never knew you were also a philosopher. Those are deep words right there. And I'll take that with me tonight, just like every other Ambazonian. It's a pleasure having you yet again on Undaunted. We'll say a good night to you now, Barrister Mbeseha. Have a great night.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. All right, now we head on with the rest of the news. Coming up next is news around Africa. Well, on the African scene, thousands of demonstrators filled the streets of Accra, Ghana's capital, demanding an end to illegal mining, commonly known as galamsey. Protesters vowed to keep pressuring the government until it addresses the issue and its detrimental environmental impact. One attendee emphasized, "My motivation is to see illegal mining stop in Ghana. We need to keep protesting to catch their attention." The protest spanned from Thursday to Saturday, and unlike a previous demonstration organized by Democracy Hub, police did not intervene. The Catholic Church is planning a peaceful demonstration against illegal mining as well on Friday, while labor unions are set to declare a nationwide strike on Thursday. Participants criticized the government's indifference, referencing statements from officials indicating a lack of urgency. They also called for the release of individuals arrested during prior protests. Well, in Tunisia, we see Tunisians casting votes in controversial presidential elections. Tunisians are heading to the polls today for a presidential election that opposed groups have labeled neither free nor fair. President Kais Saied is seeking a second term and amidst accusations of restricting candidates and silencing dissent. Only 2 challengers were approved by the Electoral Commission, while others face imprisonment or disqualification. Said, who took office in 2019, initially garnered popular support, but has faced increasing criticism after suspending parliament and altering the constitution to enhance his authority. With the opposition calling for a boycott, voter turnout remains uncertain amongst the nearly 10 million eligible voters, especially as authorities have cracked down on dissenting voices. And when we go to Burundi, we see that avocado farmers experience a boost amid government support. Now, in a remote area of Burundi, farmers are finding new opportunities as they gather by a highway to sell their avocados to export companies. This once informal market now promises substantial earnings thanks to government initiatives and the establishment of farmers' cooperatives. Now, just a year ago, farmers earned a mere 10 cents per kilogram of avocados. Today, they receive approximately 70 cents, a significant increase for many who depend on farming for their livelihood. The introduction of direct payments into cooperative accounts has streamlined the process, ensuring fairer compensations. Despite this progress, there remains a considerable gap as exporters fetch between $3 and $5 per kilogram on international markets. Farmers and officials advocate for stronger regulations to maximize the potential of avocado exports, likening their economic impact to that of coffee. With a government goal to plant 50,000 avocado trees in each province and ambitions to export over 10 million tons annually by 2030, the cooperative model may offer a pathway out of poverty. If similar initiatives were adopted across Africa, particularly in nations that are grappling with inflation, it could alleviate food insecurity and enhance the livelihood of families living below the poverty line. This is why this particular case in Burundi is so particular and interesting. Well, with that, we'll move on to the news across the globe. In the United States, Harris's border visit and economy speech capture attention as warning signs emerge for campaign. Kamala Harris's recent visit to the border and her speech outlining her economic vision have generated significant attention from Americans, according to the Breakthrough Polling Project. However, there are warning signs for her campaign. The share of Americans hearing about Harris has decreased weekly since her presidential debate with Donald Trump in early September. Moreover, the tone of what Americans say about her has become increasingly negative in recent weeks, reaching the lowest point of her campaign. Interestingly, when Americans are asked what comes to mind when thinking about Harris, words like border, polls, campaign, and notably lie are top of mind. This negative association is concerning, especially since lie has consistently ranked high in the latest data. It's worth noting that immigration is a major concern for Americans, with many viewing it as the most important problem facing the country. Harris's role in addressing border issues has been questioned, and her campaign efforts to downplay her border responsibilities may not be resonating with voters. Overall, while Harris's visit and speech have generated attention, her campaign faces challenges in improving her visibility and perception amongst Americans. Harris's weighs more breaks with Biden as he keeps interjecting himself into the campaign. Top aides to Kamala Harris are heading into the final months of the 2024 presidential race since wrestling with how much distance she can credibly claim from Joe Biden as she looks for more ways to weave in breaks with him on the campaign trail. But she keeps getting pulled back to his side for official business at the White House, and he keeps interjecting himself into the conversation. Harris's aides are looking at rolling out new plans and promises for what Harris would do as president, in part to directly demonstrate notable differences, like in her recent more blunt speeches about abortion rights and tackling the southern border. The challenge of having so little time left is such a short race. One advisor to the vice president told CNN this is when you're trying to reach undecided low-intensity voters, how do you actually communicate difference with Biden? Meanwhile, more than 20 soldiers were killed as a result of an October 3rd missile strike on Russian-occupied territory near Donetsk, including 6 officers from North Korea who came to confer with their Russian counterparts. Kiev's post-intelligence sources had this to say. There were 3 more North Korean servicemen wounded. Now, according to reports from Russia, social media, prior to the missile strike, the Russians were demonstrating to North Korean representatives the training of personnel for assault actions and defense. Well, more details we'll bring across to you in our subsequent bulletins, but for now, we get you the recap of Undaunted. Yes, with our global report, we've come to the end of Undaunted tonight. But of course, before we go, we'll give you the recap. Looking at Ambazonia, after more than 60 years with La République still to enjoy good road networks. Seeing the roads going to Achatsugi case in study for tonight being a nightmare. Bad roads yet again in Ambazonia. The rising insecurity in Bamenda as well, with gunmen killing an innocent man and his friend kidnapped in a targeted attack. Mamfe appeals to La République du Cameroon for hospital rehabilitation amidst ongoing struggles for dignity and after 2 years of the colonial forces burning down this Mamfe hospital. The so-called major national dialogue, which was a major national monologue, still a failure after 4 years, with the growing violence in Ambazonia and us wondering when La République will reconsider a genuine dialogue. The massive protest erupting in Ghana against illegal mining we saw on the African scene and on the global reports, Harris's border visit and economy speech capture attention as only warning signs emerge from the campaign. And with that, we've come to the end of Undaunted tonight, bringing into the news untold stories. I am Star Smart and will leave you with ABC Amba TV images. Good night and God bless you.